So last year on our anniversary of my birthday, Pat got me this beautiful book that I reference almost every single day, but it's my Japan Antoine stories. And in one of these stories, he talks about one of my relatives, and his wife passes away, and he is just grief ridden and he cannot move. And he takes off all his clothes and he wraps himself in a robe and he just has his moccasins on, and he was like just gonna go outside and lay in the bush and just stay there until he died. And when he was out there, his late wife came to him in a dream and she said, take one of my teeth and sew it into your shirt, so you carry a piece of me with you, but remember that I'll always be here. And she just motioned over the land. And when I read that story and we read that together, we talked about that, when we could have that shift that this is a nurture ship, it changed everything. And it changed the way that we looked at the land, but then also the way that we looked with ourselves, and then every single relationship that we had with anyone, with our children, with our friends, with our siblings, that sort of nurtureship is the goal for everything. If I'm looking at him through a lens of nurtureship, there's no way I would pollute you on purpose. I would never harm you intentionally.
A couple months ago, I was having a conversation with a family member, and my family member was going through a breakup with her partner at the time. And we were sitting outside my house, and my family member was crying and was really grieving hard, what she believed to be a relationship that she was going to be in for the rest of her life. And as she's crying, she looks over at me, and the look on her face, I think, is what struck me first. And she was looking at me for answers. And I love this person. I love her very much. And she looked at me and she had this look in her face of just like almost desperation. Mm-hmm. And she asked me, are we all doomed? Like, are we all doomed? Like, are any of us ever going to have a healthy relationship with another Indigenous person? Like, are any of us ever going to experience happiness in a relationship with another Indigenous person? Because we are all in relationships with other children of residential school survivors, boarding schools. We are in relationship with collective pain. You and I are both the daughters of residential school survivors. We are the children of, or the grandchildren of residential school survivors. And we all are, in this kind of thick mud. Sometimes it's what it feels like, of colonial trauma. And so having a healthy relationship within that can be challenging. There's some adversity in that, right? So what does that actually mean? Like, what does that actually mean for us in our adult relationships and specifically in our intimate partner relationships? Children of alcoholic parents, children of addict parents will literally refuse their authentic feelings for attachment all the time. We could be genuinely scared, hurt, joyful, whatever it may be, but we will deny our authentic feelings to ensure that there's attachment. Mm-hmm. And we will always do that. So being children of residential school survivors, of addicts, it has been programmed in our brain to be extremely loyal, even when it's not deserving. Even when it's not deserving, we are extremely loyal. We've been programmed to believe that men maybe will hurt us. Maybe they will, whether that be, abandonment or neglect or, or there's some sort of ambivalent attachment where we don't know if they're coming back. We don't know what state they're going to come back in. Then we look at our mothers and how our mothers survived. that there are so many of our people who are in relationships and that have been in relationships like I have, who want so badly for that relationship to work out. I have genuinely felt that in my relationships that I could love someone into loving themselves, therefore returning the love to me. And while that sounds good in theory, and it sounds good to say that, like I'm gonna love you so much that you are gonna love yourself, and then in return just give me a little piece of that. Just give me a little piece of that love that I've given to you, and then never giving it back.
Looking back, we were just kids, you know, and looking at both of our lives from a bird's eye view, we didn't really have an idea of what, for myself, like what does a husband look like? What does a father look like? And a friend, you know, like those simple things. And a lot of that was from trauma in our families and how we grew up.
It's that shit that we individually endured in our lives that when we came together, we dove into a relationship without having a conversation, a real conversation about what each other's needs were, and really unpacking the childhood shit. And not only the childhood shit, the generational collective shit. Can you live the rest of your life in this relationship knowing that he cannot meet those needs? And not because he doesn't want to, because he doesn't know how. And can you live the rest of your life in this relationship knowing that he can't meet those needs and that you possibly could get them filled by your girlfriends, by your family, healthy, outside of your relationship? Can you do that?
And then I thought eventually, you know, one day, if I give this man all that I can, you know, it's going to be my turn. And that never came. And these men would not really understand how the damage that they're, and like the way that they're hurting the soul of these women. And me also fully taking responsibility for that. You know, I allowed that for so long, not knowing that that was hurting me though. And so when I could take a step back and look and say, okay, you know, you in order to make this better, like I have to be a whole person outside of this. And I just wasn't.
And so part of me, when I was getting into my early relationships in my life, I was realizing I was just craving a family because I was abandoned. And part of that too was I felt like there was a part of me that felt like I wasn't worthy of love because if my dad left, then my mom left. And then, you know, who's gonna love this kid was my big feeling that I didn't know was there for a long time. And that's the reason why I jumped into a relationship, and then after it didn't work, I jumped into another one. If that didn't work, I jumped into the other one, and then finally I met Marissa. And then I didn't know I was in a pattern, right? I was doing this thing that I was always chasing that family that I never had, and I just felt a little bit of it when I started a relationship.
You know, I remember leaving a relationship when I was younger. And I remember my mom sitting with me in a car. And we were sitting in the vehicle and she looked at me and she said, "My girl, when are you gonna wake up?" And it was in regards to my relationship, my unhealthy relationship at that time. And she said, "Do you wanna live through what I lived through?" You know, our parents
our collective parents didn't have a fair shot at having healthy relationships. They weren't given a fair shot. And so they did the best they could with the skills, resources, and the knowledge that they had at that time. And it is our responsibility in our generation to demonstrate something different for our own children, but also bring all those really great things that we learned. You know, my parents are resilient as fuck. I want to be in a healthy relationship. I want to be in a healthy relationship with a partner who creates space for me, who is open to like unpacking all of this stuff. But that's really hard. That's really hard. My partner wasn't able to do that for me. And my partner wasn't able to do that for me because of what he didn't get. Right. In his relationships in early childhood. He didn't know how to do that for me. And so I think that that's where this is coming from, is like, what did we not get in our childhoods? What did we not get from those early childhood, like those early childhood relationships that we seek out from others in our adult relationships, and that we aren't able to provide because we genuinely don't know how? I'm really sick and tired of the rhetoric, though, that a lot of our people use around like, well, I didn't have that, so I don't know how to do it, so therefore you're not going to get that from me. We're adults now. We have choice. We can unpack this shit and we can actually work through it together as adults. And I think that that's where part of my fear and my frustration comes from, is that I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to say, okay, I haven't been able to give you that. You need that, and I haven't been able to give it to you, but I want to try. I want to try. But if we consistently and constantly get into relationships with other people who use that rhetoric and that narrative to disengage purposely and be blissfully kind of ignorant in that, I think that's really super problematic. And I think, again, that's part of a survival tactic. It's part of a survival tactic. This is where I think I don't want to just survive.
I do not want to nick myself with.
I want there to be thriving. I want Indigenous couples to thrive. I don't want my daughters to grow up to be these beautiful Indigenous girls that they are and to feel hopeless. I want them to feel hope. When they meet an Indigenous man or a girl, whatever they decide, I want them to feel some hope where they're like, you know what, we could do this. And a lot of our people don't have the language. They just don't. And not because they don't, not because they're not bright or not because they're not whatever. They just don't have the language for it. So they can't even name it. And again, like, I want people to be able to name it. I want people to be able to say, you know what, I'm feeling a little abandoned right now. I'm feeling a little neglected. And I'm feeling this way because, you know, I've recognized that you've distanced yourself from me, or you're working a lot, or whatever it might be. I want people to be able to have that language to do that. But for the recipient to also be able to say, like, okay, I'm hearing you.
And having these conversations about, okay, this isn't healthy behavior, you know, or being open enough to say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry.
I think for a lot of people, any kind of change is difficult. And for me, there's a lot of turning points when it comes to love where I grew a lot.
I remember at one point having to make a decision. We need to recognize when this stuff comes up for us. And we need to recognize, is this actually in present moment, or is this our past?
okay, you need to leave this. Like, you need to let go of this because this will impact your future relationship. And I think so many of us have, whether we're in unhealthy relationships or move into multiple relationships, will carry that shit with us. You know, and how do you just let go of that control? I want better. I want better for us. I want better for our kids. I want better for our people. Like, I want us to be able to have healthy relationships. And then we hear some of our people saying, like, well, I give up on Native men. I'm done with y'all. Like, I'm fucking done with y'all. There has to be a fighting chance for us, for our kids, for future generations. Like, our literal survival is dependent on us having healthy relationships. And like, we need to keep birthing Indigenous babies somehow, right?
I have a choice right now if I'm going to live my mother's life or if I'm going to make a choice to move on and seek out that healthier relationship.
Where you have to make a decision. Wherever you are in your life, you decided to be there. You're there because you decided to be there, not because you're not deciding to not be there, you know, by doing the work. And that just kind of hit me. I was like, oh man, okay. Whenever we got bad, I took full responsibility. I was like, what did I do on my side to make this happen? And we're here struggling in our relationship because I decided that we're gonna struggle. You know, I took that full responsibility, and then I'd always step back and be like, what is that? What am I doing that is not, you know, right? What am I doing that I can improve on? And then that led me to a quote by Jim Rohn, and he said, you know, a lot of relationships are, you know, you take care of me if I take, you know, I'll take care of you if you take care of me. Really transactional. And then he said, a better philosophy is, I'll take care of me for you if you take care of you for me. And then together we can meet, you know, as better people coming together. And then that really hit me on our relationship of how I can improve this relationship or where we're at. You know, there's a couple like philosophies that I have that just help me in so much areas of my life. And it's real simple. You know, I realize that if you want things to become better, then you have to become better. If you want things to change, then you have to change.
I love you. I love you too.